I went to Ohio, and all I got were a lot of boneless chicken wings, which were delightful for the record.
Well, not to one up you, but I went to a Bigfoot festival and all I got was a forever image of a large, hairy dude wearing Daisy Dukes.
Sounds fun. Also, what is it with cobwebs? What are they even? Dust coming alive?
I found out that I'm a solid 5'7", not 5'6 3/4" like I previously thought. So, like, I'm officially a tall chick.
Okay, tall Heather in the house. Have such a good day. Hello, world. Welcome back to Have Such a Good Day, the show that wants you to just leave.
The show where we rap about everything but the kitchen sink. How's your summer going, y'all out there?
Yeah. How's your kitchen sinks?
Episode 156,
Because mine doesn't drain very well, turns out. Oh, boy.
Yeah, I know how that is. We have a disposal switch that's like across the room. So like every time you get your, you got to do it. You got to turn on that switch. You got to like lean way over the dishwasher and it's a whole thing. And I usually hurt myself and you got to laugh so you don't cry, Sarah. Seriously.
Well, and that is sort of the point of the show, isn't it, Heather?
Indeed it is.
Heather and I, but between shows, I mean, a lot of you, especially those in the Discord, know we have a lot of life in between these episodes of shows. A lot of things happen, and we say, are we going to talk about it on the show? Are we not going to talk about it on the show? Oh my gosh. But that is the point of the show, that we unpack the absurdity of everyday life for hopefully your entertainment, because why not? Yeah.
And speaking of absurdity, Sarah, you talked at the top of the show about cobwebs and like what are they? And it's interesting you bring that up because I'm having an issue with the teeniest, tiniest. I mean, I'm telling you, like you could not have a tinier spider, but there's a bunch of them. And there's all these cobwebs that they're making, like big kind of sweeping cobwebs in my art studio. And there's all these tiny little teeny spiders all over the wall. And it's like, how did those little teeny guys make such big sweeping cobwebs? It's just one of nature's mysteries.
So there's
okay,
a spider
let's
web
unpack
thing.
this, Sarah.
Yeah, let's unpack it. Starting now. So there's spider webs. I get that.
Yeah.
You see a spider, you see a web. Sometimes it's like actually pretty cool, even though you're like, please, spider,
don't bite
get
me.
out of my house, kind of thing. But then cobwebs are often not spider related. They're just like dust related, but they end up, taking court in a corner, and then all of a sudden there's a cobweb going to like another corner where I'm like, how did this happen? I just dusted in here.
I know. And I think it is, I actually didn't have time to look it up, but it is like dust dancing of some kind. It's dust
so weird,
collecting.
though. It's like,
yeah, it's very weird.
Yeah, it's like, if this was not animal related, how did the cobweb do that? It's like a smart cobweb. The cobweb is sentient. Oh,
maybe cobwebs have more brains than we think. I don't know. What do you guys think? Please email us at hi@havessuchagoodday and help us crack the code of cobwebs.
Yeah, do it.
Lanes, how's your trip?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so for anybody who needs to be caught up, I got on an airplane last weekend for the first time in over 2 years.
Craziness.
And I was kind of stressed about it. I mean, I was excited. I was going to a wedding, which I went to. I'll get to that in a minute. But I was just sort of like, okay, I'm going to go to an airport and I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to fly somewhere far away. And I'm just kind of out of practice. And I know that a lot of people have flown recently. For those of you that have and have had like terrible delays, I was worried that was going to be my experience as well. It wasn't. I mean, I got, I had to from where I live, small municipal airport, Santa Rosa Airport, had to fly through Dallas and then go eventually to Cleveland, where I then had to like rent a car and go to a small town outside of Cleveland where this wedding was. And, I was like, so many things can go wrong. Nothing
Yeah.
went wrong.
Did you end up getting
Nothing.
in really late?
No. Well, yeah. I mean, but that was just the flight pattern.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got in late. I knew I was going to, but there was no delays. There was no
It's
hassle. There was
amazing.
no nothing. It was
Awesome.
pretty chill.
Smooth
However,
sailing.
smooth sailing, absolutely. However, I when I so my first airport, which is, I mean, literally down the street from where I live now, small, teeny tiny airport. Everybody was kind of masked up, and it kind of felt okay. We're all doing this. Once I got to Texas, into DFW, I had like a 2 hour layover or something, and I was like, wow, nobody in this airport is wearing masks, and it was busy. It was hopping, and then on that flight into Cleveland, none of the flight attendants were wearing masks. Nobody,
Wow,
that
really?
I had to deal with. Yeah, no,
Huh.
nobody I had to deal with that was like airline based, or I got like a salad at this, I don't know, weird place in the airport. Like nobody was wearing masks. And I just kind of like, I looked around like, okay, well, okay. I guess we're just not doing that anymore. I mean, I was, because that's just what I'm doing. Anytime I'm like going to be in a room of sorts with a lot of people. But no, I mean, we were a very small minority. Nobody was masked up, and it was a little weird. But at the same time, I was like, have I just been living in some sort of bubble? Of like
Yeah.
some people who think that we're still supposed to be doing this and nobody else is. And then you go down a rabbit hole of like, well, that's why COVID is still happening. And,
Yeah.
no judgment, because if you aren't required to wear it, then, I get it that maybe you won't. But, yeah, it was a little bit of a dose of reality.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's kind of interesting too, because the new strains, they're saying that you can kind of keep getting sick over and over and over.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, someone like Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel had it twice in 1 month, and I'm like, man, after the week I went through, I can't imagine like 2 weeks later getting it
It's like, what
again.
happened to those antibodies?
Like that's kind of
Like,
evil. Yeah. So they're saying that like some of these new strains, the antibody thing doesn't work. It like isn't a thing. And it's like, that seems really cruel, like that's like a cruel, an extra cruel edge to this disease. But yeah, we were actually talking about this exact subject in Discord this morning. Tim mentioned that he went to CES earlier this year, and he said that 100% of the attendees were required to be masked, and they had like free test kits and everything. And then later at another convention, there was like 2% masked and zero enforcement, and there were exhibitors that were notably sick and still working the floor. And then our buddy Leah, she basically said she lives in the UK, and she rarely sees masks anymore, and she thinks
yeah.
that the country has decided it's over. There's no real legal requirement to isolate anymore. So it's kind of like, yeah. I mean, I feel like it's also sure no legal requirement, but what about being cautious of your fellow man and just kind of being like erring on the cautious side? Like, why
Yeah.
don't people do that? I don't know.
I thought about that on my flight. On my flight to Cleveland from Dallas, it was a pretty empty flight, and I got lucky, and I had a 3-seater to myself, which to me is like, that's a bed. So, because I'm a little person, so like, you give me 3 seats in coach, I will sleep. I will lay down. But the woman behind me was coughing the entire flight. And so I never
Fun.
really slept, because every time she coughed, I was like, oh God, oh God, you know,
That's
and
pretty
kind of look
stressful.
behind me like, yeah, exactly. You know, like that would be stressful anyway, just any
Yeah.
time, you know, where you're like, oh God, is someone sick next to me? I don't really get sick very often. Like I haven't had a cold or a flu and like, I don't know, since I was a child. So I'm not super worried about it the way that other people are. But COVID era is a little bit different. And yeah, like
Yeah.
I looked back, you know, kind of between the seats at her a couple times, like, girl, you wearing a mask? Because you're coughing.
Was she?
No, she was
Oh,
not.
that is not cool at all.
Well, I know
Wow.
exactly. It's like, and I'm not gonna. I don't know. I mean, I guess I could have said something, but I didn't want to, because it's like, I don't know. Maybe you just have a cough. That
Oh, or
happens
like if you have
sometimes.
allergies or yeah, and you're sneezing, say you're
Totally.
not sick, but wear a mask because that
It
seems to
it
throw a lot of
seemed it
stress into
seemed
the mix, you know?
yeah, it seemed
Unnecessary
a
stress.
little. You know, I wasn't like totally worried, but I was like, it just seems like poor form.
Yeah.
You know, in this day and age that we're living in, like, let's not pretend that people aren't scared about other people coughing behind them on an airplane.
Yeah, where they're like
But you
two
know, I'm
feet away.
good. All is well. All is well. I I I did it. I flew, Heather, and I know you're flying pretty soon, and I know you're kind of stressed about it. And I was pretty stressed about this
Yeah.
before going. Just I'm out of practice. I really just was like, I'm gonna go to an airport and like I have to take my shoes off at, you know, going through security and like I have to like check stuff, you know, if my, you know, liquids are too big and, you know, just all the things.
How are
And
the
it was,
lines
it
at the
was
airport, like the security lines and stuff?
totally fine. It was,
Oh,
it was so chill.
mm-hmm.
Honestly, I was pleasantly surprised, turns
Oh,
out.
good, good. Well, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, I've done some short flights. I don't feel like those count though, you know, flying kind of interstate, you know, to LA and back. But I feel like, yeah, I'm going on a longer flight and I'm actually having to do a connection because I live really far away and I live near a municipal airport like you, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I got to take 2 planes to Chicago. So yeah, we have an hour and a half connector lag. So I just read this article. This flight attendant was kind of giving advice on, you know, this crazy new time of traveling and what to kind of think about and how to prepare with all these shortages and cancellations and crowds and everything. And one of the things she was saying is like the hour, like you know, the hour between connecting flights is not enough anymore. Just like that's gone, you know? So you got to have more. And I'm like, oh, we have like an hour and 24 minutes. I'm like, okay, I guess that's better than an hour, but still kind of cutting it close, you know? But, uh,
Yeah.
but glad you made it home safe and sound and that you had a good time and that
Yeah.
you ate lots of chicken wings. But wouldn't a chicken wing without bones be like a nugget? This is my question.
Okay, so a little context here. So I went to a wedding in a little town called Vermilion, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cleveland, like 45-minute drive outside of Cleveland proper. And I mean, Americana at its finest. Truly. I mean, it was so cute. It's a boat town. It's on Lake Erie. So, you know, a lot of people just like, I think a lot of like vacation homes kind of vibe going on, which is, I get that because where I live, a lot of people also have vacation, you know, second homes, you know, come up, go to the Russian River, have fun, and then go back to your house. But it is for a girl from NorCal to go to a small town in Ohio, it is different. And how is it different? I don't really know how to put my finger on that, but it just is. It just is, and it was adorable. I loved it. At the same time, you know, after 3 days, I was like, I need lettuce.
Yeah,
And
totally.
like very fresh tomatoes and some tea and good sleep. Thank you very much. There's a place in Vermilion, and shout out to anybody who's ever been there because you'll know what I'm talking about. there's a place called Quaker's Steak and Lube, which is a
man.
restaurant. Yeah. And, I looked it up beforehand because this is who I am. I stalk everything beforehand. And I was like, there's a place called Quaker's Steak and Lube. And the groom, who's my friend, that's why I went to the wedding, was like, oh yeah, that's where our after party is on the wedding night. Yeah, we're totally going there. And I'm like, awesome. And so, and like their claim to fame is that they have like the most wing sauces
Wow.
that you can get, in the, I don't know,
That's exciting.
Midwest or whatever. Yeah, so you get wings, and then it's like, what kind of sauce do you want? Because you have 30 options.
Wow, what kind did you get?
So I don't even remember. I don't know. I mean,
blur, huh?
it's after a while, it's like, I don't know, blue cheese or whatever.
Yeah.
But we all ate a lot of wings, and they were
Nice.
delightful. They really were. They were so. The whole thing was just so fun. But as I boarded my flight home on Sunday night, kind of a little sleep deprived, and sort of buzzing off of, seeing so many friends and, so many conversations and, all the wonderful things that I wanted over the weekend, which did happen. I felt like, girl, you got to detox. You got to eat some veggies. So that's what I'm doing this week.
So they didn't have like a sit down dinner at the wedding. It was like they went to that bar after and you guys ate chicken wings.
There was food at the wedding.
Oh,
There were like
okay.
stations. There were
Yeah.
tacos. There were
Oh,
sliders.
good.
It was great. But it was also like, how weddings are. People get drunk and they want to
Totally.
eat, late night and, so.
Yeah, I think I
Wings
recall.
were had.
I think I recall eating like 3 pieces of wedding cake at your wedding, and I may be blacked out after
God.
that. I don't know.
Oh,
Lost the
God.
dress. That dress. I have no idea what
I-
happened to that dress.
I did have a wedding, didn't I, Heather? Huh.
You
yeah.
did. I know. Sorry to
Yeah.
remind you. I don't know.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It was a nice night. It was
It was
fun.
super fun. I mean, my memories are a little spotty. I like to drink champagne when I go to weddings and dance it up, but I remember having a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a lovely time. Everybody was lovely, and that's all I have to say about that.
Well, it's really
But,
funny
what-
because go
Change the
1, 2, 3,
subject
go.
immediately,
1, 2, 3, go.
But yeah, what
No, you.
what else is going on in your world?
Well, it's funny you're talking about kind of a small town. I don't know if it was podunky when you say Americana. I mean, I guess it's kind of hard to describe.
I feel like podunky is like not nice. It's like when
Yeah,
you say
maybe.
something's podunk, it's like, oh, then it, it's like
Yeah.
people are stupid or whatever. Like, I don't
Sure.
really like that term.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a small town for sure, but I'm also from a small town. Like, I
Yeah.
have no problem with small towns.
Yeah, I mean, I guess not podunky, but maybe more like, I went to a place called the Lager Bar, so you can imagine, and it's in a really small town. I mean, it's smaller than my town, and it's east of here, like really nice weather. We went over there. There was an event. It was like a parade. It was a Bigfoot festival. There was all kinds of things going on. They had a car show. It was really fun. And we just popped into the Lager Bar. We didn't drink or anything, but we were just like, I just want to see inside this place. Like, I've seen it so many times. I'm intrigued. And there was obviously something going on in there. So we popped in and, oh man, I mean, I can't, I wish I took more photos because it was such
Just
a
good
scene.
people watching.
Oh, just amazing. And they had, it was so cool the way they did the interior. It was all of these vintage chainsaws hanging up in the ceiling and like Bigfoot things. And just like, it was pretty cool. It was very, it was like in the middle of nowhere, but it definitely had like an artistic vibe to it. I was pretty impressed. It was, and it's some of these just total characters playing pool in the middle of the day, just like a whole scene. I don't remember what kind of music was playing, but it was probably like Patsy Cline or Elvis or something like that. But it was a fun thing to peek on.
Patsy Cline or Elvis, with all the chainsaws, of course.
Well, it is called the Lager Bar, so I get the chainsaw.
I mean, and for
motif.
anybody who's not familiar with, especially Heather's part of the world, much more than mine, it is, there's a logging. I mean, a lot of people truly cut down trees for work.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's a true thing.
It is. I mean, it's a bit more like historical now because there's less trees and, I mean, there is clear cutting up here and stuff, but it's, the logging industry is definitely not as prominent up here as it used to be. But it's funny because I actually had a couple friends come up this weekend, kind of on a whim. I had seen them last weekend, saw them 2 weekends in a row. It ended up being a very fun couple weeks of just like that kind of, the DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince song, Summer, Summer, Summertime.
Oh, I love
that whole
song.
thing.
Yeah.
Time to sit back in and when it totally just had that like 90s vibe, like they came up and they had never been up here. And one of them is like, she's really a world traveler and she's gone to a lot of really cool places in the world. And I don't know if I would call her like bougie, but she definitely is particular about like where she goes and what she does and kind of has a particular kind of expectation. And
Apologies if you're listening, friend.
yeah, no, not apologies at all.
Well, some people, like when you call them bougie, are like, I'm not bougie. I don't actually consider that to be derogatory, but to each their own.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think bougie is derogatory at all. I mean, her and I talk about it, but like, so yeah, it was just kind of like really fun, hot weather, good summer vibes. And she just was kind of freaking out about it up here, like in a really good way. Like it was a very awesome, not unexpected, but I was like, we're in a small town and it's super beautiful and special, but I just wasn't sure what she would think. And she just was really blown away and really had a great time. And I made this like to-do list. I was like, cause I wanted to show, she'd never been up here. So I was like, okay, I want to curate where we go, like the things that I like up here, that I think she would like. And so, because I'm a list freak, I made a list and I'm like, okay, we're going to go there. We're going to do this. We're going to eat there. We're going to go to this beach. We're going to play this. We're going to play bocce ball. And then we're going to go to this restaurant. We're going to make this food and go on this hike and blah, 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 blah. And we had these like rowdy dinner parties with music. It was super fun. The weather was awesome. And, we watched the sunset every night. And there were like, it was just like a really fun, it felt very, very summertime party time, and
Yay.
so, yeah. And then like the last night we were like, all right, we got to chill, we burnt the candle a little bit, like maybe like you did in Ohio. But gosh, it was so much fun. And then yesterday was a Monday. And of course I just left everything because I got to push all my responsibilities when people come and stay because I'm hosting, and it takes a lot of energy and I want to be front and center. I want to be cooking and hosting and having a good time. So I kind of just put everything off and boy, did I feel the, just everything sort of happening all at once yesterday. I shouldn't have done it, but I kind of booked a bunch of appointments at the house with these different contractors. And I had this guy who I had already had scheduled a time with him to come back to follow up on, we're going to, renovate one of my bathrooms. And so, we're on kind of a schedule. So he's, comes back, we talk again about, the budget and like everything. And then I've got people knocking at my door while I'm sitting down with him trying to like make decisions, and I'm kind of like, I had to walk my neighbor's dog, I'm trying to squeeze that in between like a million other things. And, and yeah, this other contractor came by, but like, it wasn't the contractor that I've been talking to for the last 2 weeks, sending photographs to and talking about these jobs. He sent his son, but like didn't tell me. And it was just like super confusing. And it was just one of these, like, it was a really interesting day yesterday. I definitely know that a lot of the flurry was because I maybe partied too hard over the weekend, but it was totally worth it. So yeah, I leave next week for Chicago.
You at one point yesterday you were like, because we decided to push the recording of the show one day, which none of you will probably even notice, but just for Heather and
sometimes
my calendar. But you were like, Heather, there was no way I could have done this today.
Like literally,
like,
I couldn't
all good,
squeeze
girl.
it in.
All good.
Oh my God. It was insane. I mean, seriously. Oh, and then you'll love this at 2:00. So like we have new guests check in at 3. And usually because my gardener slash housekeeper slash kind of my Swiss Army knife on the property has been in New York and Vermont for the last 2 weeks. So I've had to kind of step back in a little more and really keep tabs on who's cleaning, because I've got like 3 different people like backing her up. And so when she's normally doing it, she does almost like 98% of the cleanings. And so I don't really need to like check up on her because she's always here and she's on top of it. But like I kind of had to keep tabs because she's on vacation. And so
Of course, yeah.
I kind of got out of practice, and I'm like, I'm outside. I just finished walking Margie the dog, and it was like 2:05 or something, and I got this like total, my stomach dropped. You know that feeling, Sarah, when I was like, I don't think anyone's been here today to clean. And so I ran in the house, got my book, checking like, is someone coming in? Because I thought that they were, and indeed they were, and they were showing up at 3. So I had like a little mini heart attack, but all is well. It was cleaned. Someone did come in. They just didn't let me know. And so it was just like, you know, those days where you're just in a sweat like all day, just kind of, I don't know. Like
That was
just,
my day today. In fact,
oh boy.
As we record the show, what are we looking at? In 12 minutes, they could show up at any time. We're good.
No.
But I had to do some fancy footwork this morning. And that's
Fancy
like
footwork is a good way to put it.
on top of like cleaning stuff. It's like, it's just other things, you know?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
you have to make sure. It's hard to explain. It's hard to explain. I never really realized how much busy work this is.
Yeah.
It's not
can
rocket
be.
science. You know, I think I've even said this before on the show. It's like, it isn't rocket science, but
No.
it will disrupt your life.
Yeah,
It
it
will.
will.
You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
because as soon as something happens, it's like, drop whatever you're doing and you know, deal with the guests. Make
Yep.
sure the
I
guests are
did-
happy.
I definitely had a few snags over the weekend with some future guests that were kind of trying to they were sort of demanding things like with very little notice before they show up, kind of thing. And I had to really do some troubleshooting this weekend. And yeah, it sucks because a lot of I find, you know, I have people staying every single day of the year almost, you know, but like I feel like on the weekend, that's when I get a lot of my problems. I don't know what it is. Maybe, I don't know,
I think
weekend
it's
hours.
people probably doing more of like a, you know, this is, you know, a special event for us.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, a
Yeah.
anniversary, and we expect everything to be perfect, kind of thing.
Yeah, it was funny actually. This one woman who was all excited that we offer barbecues. You know, we have several Webers. I mean, they are charcoal. We don't have, you know, the fancy, you know, propane ones, but it's great. People use them all the time. This woman was like all excited. She's like, "Where, you know, can I reserve that in advance? Because I say that on the website that you should let me know in advance." I'm like, "Yeah, totally." And she's like, "But does it take, you know, charcoal or propane?" I'm like, "Charcoal." And she's just like, "Never mind." Like kind of in a way that was just sort of like, "Oh, charcoal.
Oh, like I'm
Oh,
too good
F
for that. Well,
Kind
I
of.
mean,
It was like,
yeah.
sorry. Anyway, but but
There
yeah,
are there are definitely things that people ask me for around these parts as well, where I'm like, I mean, I will go to bat, you know, like to a point. But I mean, if you're gonna ask me for something that's a little, you know, a little too specific, like you're a little picky,
Yeah.
you know, considering that you're coming to a very nice home that is like beautiful, clean, all the amenities, and you want something we don't have, you know, at a certain point, I gotta go like, no.
yeah, you do.
You go into town and you get that for yourself, and that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Like bring your own sheets maybe if like you're extremely sensitive, you know, because we have to make sure that we're cleaning things properly. And yeah, I mean, I think it is really interesting the different levels of people's sensitivities and how much they want us to really tailor their experience. It's kind of interesting. But yeah, I'm kind of bracing myself a little bit for, you know, I'm getting on a plane next week. I'm starting to feel the heat of quite literally. I'm looking at the weather forecast, and this always happens, but like, you look and you're going somewhere and you're like, what's the weather going to be like a week out? And it was like this last week in Chicago was sort of perfect. It was like in the 70s and some thunderstorms, which I was so hoping to have. And then, of course, when I'm there, it's like 95.
Best of luck with all that.
Yeah,
And
I'm
it's
like,
gonna
great.
be
It's going to be humid heat wave, mosquitoes, love me, wish me luck.
You know what? It's gonna be fun though, Heather. It'll be fun.
It will be.
Chicago in the summer. I love Chicago. It's one of my
I'm
favorite
really excited,
cities.
actually. I am. I'm
Yeah.
like partially.
You're gonna
It's fun.
have- you're gonna
I'm
have a great time.
excited. I'm excited, but I'm also like, I know I'm gonna probably, at least when I get to Iowa, I'll probably be eating a lot of like like not a lot of fresh lettuce or whatever.
Boneless wings.
Yeah, boneless wings, nuggets, if you will. But I'd like to know from you guys. I'm asking this as a teeny tiny spider crawls up the wall in front of me. Are you going on a trip this summer that you're excited about or not excited about, or kind of like a little mixed bag? Email us at hi@havessuchagoodday.com. We want to hear from you.
We sure do. So switching gears a little bit, no spiders that I can see around here, although
Lots of cobwebs, though.
we did have an exterminator out here the other day who was like, wow, there are a lot of spiders around this property. And I was like, uh-huh, can you kill them? And he's like,
What
well,
kind of
sure.
spiders?
I mean, not good ones, like brown recluse, black
Oh,
widow,
God.
bad news spiders, where I'm like, okay.
You're like, I'm
I live-
moving. I'm giving my notice.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I live in the country. This is sort of, par for course.
Yeah,
I don't
totally.
want, if one of those spiders like drops on my face while I'm sleeping, I will fucking lose my mind. But otherwise, I feel like, that's what you get when you live in the
Yeah.
country, you got creatures.
You do,
around.
you do, you do. You got critters for sure, for sure. I mean, I even heard the last 2 nights, foxes screaming out in the bushes, and I get so excited, and I'm like, I want so badly to see a fox outside while he's doing that,
Just
and I never do.
screaming.
No, yeah, I never do. They're like, where did they go? I can't pinpoint where they are. I just hear them screaming, and
You imagine
yeah.
I imagine Heather in her pajamas like being like,
Oh, yeah,
"Where are
that's
you,
me."
fox," and then you
Yeah.
like go around the corner, it's a fox just being like, "Bah!"
Yeah, totally. I'm like literally, I'm crouched below the window in my t-shirt and underwear, just like looking for this fox, getting out my binoculars, and yeah, total nerd out.
Well, so all right, so we Heather is about to go on a trip. I just got back from a trip with no adverse things to report on. Pleasantly surprised, honestly. I mean, besides the mask thing, which
Try to keep up, people.
I'm a little weirded. I'm a little weirded out about that, but I had a wonderful time and all is well. But while I was there at the wedding, I was seeing a lot of friends that I know IRL, but I haven't seen many of them in years, like literally years. Like we're kind of a ragtag crew of people who live all over the country, all over the world, really, and. We all got together for one of our friends' weddings, and it was so fun. And yeah, so there was that. But a lot of the conversation that we all had was like, "When was the last time I saw you?" Because we talk on the internet like every day. We're very close.
Yeah.
But some of them, I'm like, I don't think I've seen you in like 5 years. Which would, if we
Wow.
weren't in touch, it would seem like, oh, that's like a friend I'm not in touch with. But I'm in touch with all these people. We just don't see, we're spread out. And because of that, obviously, a lot of people knowing that, I had the cancer thing last year, a lot of people, how you doing, Sarah? How you feeling? People like trying not to look at my boobs, but like clearly looking at them. Like that's just the way it goes.
Yeah,
It's like you're
geez.
curious, okay,
Yeah.
whatever. I'm like, you can touch them if you want to. I mean, they're fake anyway. But so there was a little bit more of that going on than I had really thought about or anticipated. And it's fine because these are my friends, they
Sure.
care, and this is all good stuff. But a couple of months ago, I I you know, I don't. I actually very much dislike talking about cancer stuff just because it makes me feel weird. But
Sure.
a couple of months ago, I kind of got to the point where I was like, I probably have to like unpack all of this a little bit more than I have. The whole sort of like beat cancer thing is like, I'm not really in that category yet. I would like to be, but it's like, no, I'm like still like in like recovery right now. And I
Yeah.
don't really talk to anybody about it because I don't want to. And I want it to be over
Yeah.
and I wish it didn't happen in the first place. And it's a little, I know myself well enough to know because I'm a retreater. I will just go underground and like not talk about a lot of things that are difficult. That I need to do that more.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I may not be like mentally healthy for me, you know? So and so my insurance company, Kaiser, for anybody who's familiar with Kaiser, it's this huge conglomerate of, health insurance and hospital and everything. Way back last year, like even before I even had surgery, they were like, okay, well, would you like to be part of like a breast cancer support group? And I was like, no.
Yeah.
Maybe one day, but no, that's not me. I don't like things like that. Like, ooh, no, thank you. And then they had sort of brought it up to me again because, when you're kind of in the oncology department, you have this sort of, it's almost like a team that's like dedicated to like your health, physical, but also mental and emotional. And, would you like to be a part of a cancer group? And I was like, maybe later. No, that I don't have time. That's always my MO is like, I don't have time. I
Yeah.
don't want to do that. And so, somewhat recently, because I had some like follow up appointments, plastic surgery and, whatever, it got brought up again to me like, would you like to be, maybe, because they have these like, it's like these, I don't know, once a quarter kind of like, oh, you could be part of a group. Like, you don't even have to go anywhere, it's all Zoom at this point.
Sure.
Or whatever their proprietary, video conferencing thing is. You want to do it? And so recently I was like, I probably should. I probably should. I might hate it, and if so, I don't ever have to go back again. But let's do it. Let's
Good.
let's try this. So what like an hour after we stopped this particular show, that's what I'm doing this today, and I'm kind
Wow.
of I'm kind of I don't know. I get weird about these things, but I think it's a good thing. I think it's important not that like the people in my life who love me would be burdened by me talking to them about this stuff, but I just don't talk about it ever.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a good thing to talk about. And for anybody out there who's sort of like either in therapy, thinking about therapy, thinking that therapy is, I don't know, some sort of a scarlet letter, that means that you're weak. All of those things I've thought about. And I still I have like a slight issue with it because I just want to like, be on top of my shit at all
Yeah.
times. I think it's really, 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 really important to sometimes be like, yeah, I do need help. I do need a community, and it doesn't mean that I'm failing at
No,
all.
not at all.
Not at all.
No.
But it's sometimes hard to be like, all right, I'm going to have to make time for this
Yeah.
because it's important. So, I don't know. I'll report back. I mean, obviously I'm not going to tell you what anybody said to me in the therapy group, but yeah, so I'm doing that.
I think it's good, Sarah. I mean, it's like one of those things that, yeah, it's hard to find time to do it and to get yourself to actually commit to it, but it could be like this amazing thing. And you could like make some new friends for, that'll be friends for life. I mean, who knows? I mean, that's why I think it is hard to push ourselves to do stuff that I know for me, sometimes, we're very routine based, and we were creatures of habit and that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
gosh, I mean, trying to do something different and being pleasantly surprised, like going to, I mean, this is not like an analogy to your situation, but yeah, like I would never go to a Bigfoot festival. Like, but I'm like, oh, it was kind of cool, kind of weird. Just putting myself out
Yeah.
there to do things that I normally would not, even give the time of day for. So yeah, please report back. And I think it could be a very, very positive thing. And plus just, talking to people who have had a similar experience who can really relate, and I
Yeah.
think that that's key too is, I don't know if all of your, just, I'm sure, I mean, I've got a lot of friends who've gone through it. But yeah, I'm sure talking to someone who's not your friend really, would help a lot. So
Yeah.
good. Well, I'm
You
really
know,
glad that you're
and
doing that.
and thank you, Heather. I just, on the subject of therapy in general, like not even therapy about like, take cancer out of the equation. I mean, I have done that in the past. I'm not currently in any sort of regular therapy. And, it's funny. It's like, I really have, there's like a pride issue that I feel like I have. And I think a lot of other people
I
have.
have that.
And like the word therapy is like, oh, like I suck, like I can't
Really?
do it on my own kind of thing. And, and I know a lot of people also have that feeling, and that's why they don't pursue it. And, I don't want to be on a soapbox too much, but I know that, it takes a village here. And there are just a lot of things that people go through that are, even if it's not like, I don't know, someone died or whatever, like I mean maybe that's what happened, but you're just kind of like, I just kind of want to talk it out. And
Yeah,
maybe
for
there's a little
sure.
bit more to it. Talk therapy is one thing, psychiatry is another. And, all of those things could be the right thing for the right person. But I don't know. If you're out there right now being like, I've been on the fence for this for a while and I feel really uncomfortable about it, just know that that's me. That is
Yeah.
100% me. And I feel like, sometimes I fall apart on the inside, but I keep it together on the outside because that's what I'm supposed to do.
Totally.
And
You're good at
that
that.
works. Yeah, I mean that works a lot of the time, but we're
See, I
human.
don't
We're
think
all
I'm the
human.
same. Yeah, for sure. Like I'm not as like, embarrassed about the therapy thing. I mean, I'm not seeing a therapist, but I have in different chapters of my life, and I kind of love it. Like if I had the time and the, I guess I haven't really committed to it now in my life, but if I had someone that I was talking to over the years that I was getting a lot out of just like learning about myself and learning about the world. I think it's cool. Like I would kind of love to have a therapist and be like, oh, my therapist said, this about whatever. And it really like made
Yeah.
me grow. And like, I don't know. I don't find it to be an embarrassing thing. I actually think it's really beneficial. I mean, yeah, we're human and we're not robots and we're very complicated. And
Yeah.
yeah, sure. On the surface, some people don't seem complicated and they seem like they have charmed lives. But really, there's always stuff happening behind closed doors, and there's nothing wrong with talking to some
100%.
professional about it.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, if I don't know, I sort of liken it to if Heather, if our friendship was all just me, just like unloading things on you
Yeah.
all the time, you'd be like, well, this is sort of a one-sided friendship, you
Sure.
know? But if you have a therapist who's trained to not only deal with the one-sidedness, but also give you some advice, maybe, help you, set some healthy goals, all that stuff. That's the point. I mean, it's not free.
Totally. I
So,
mean, I think
there's a cost going on here, but it is actually a pretty cool thing, for anybody who can manage that.
yeah, and I think there's a fine line too, because I mean, obviously, you talk to your close friends about like what's going on with you, but if it's to the point where it's like wow, every single day is like, it's a thing, and it
So
becomes this
yeah, it's just sort
laborious
of yeah,
thing.
this sort of like yeah,
Then it's
emotion
kind of like
dump.
maybe they should talk to somebody, but like, I think it's totally fair to lean into your friends a little bit, for some of this stuff until it gets to a point where it's like too much.
I agree.
But
I agree. I just, I guess I don't know. I thought about this a lot lately because I was like, oh gosh, I'm gonna do this cancer therapy thing. But yeah, friends are amazing. My mother, my family, like there's if you're lucky enough to have like a cool, crew of folks who either are related to you or love you, whatever, it's like that counts for a lot.
yeah,
But sometimes you kind of gotta take it, to the next level. And so I don't know if I was about to say I'll report back. I don't know if I will because
yeah,
it's probably
it's private.
kind of an in the vault thing. But yeah, I just wanted to let y'all know that I'm doing my best.
Well, thanks for sharing, Sarah. Really.
Yeah.
So I guess we're doing a bunch of switching gears today, talking about all the things but the kitchen sink. So I will continue that trend, and I wanted to talk a little bit about an email we recently got from a new patron, Chase. He writes, "Hey, Heather and
Chase.
Sarah, I thought this was a very thoughtful email, and I thought this is a fun topic." So he said, "I noticed in recent years, we never seem to hear about Generation X enough. Never enough interesting stories about how they live their lives or what their daily routine was growing up. It seems like the focus is always on the 90s kids or the baby boomers, but not Gen X. Would you two consider yourselves to be Generation X? And if so, are there any interesting things that you would like to share that inspired you during that era that defined who you are today?" Well, Chase,
Ooh. Ooh.
yeah,
Okay.
we Gen X, and
We
this
are.
is
Yeah, we are.
definitely a fascinating subject. So let's unpack this a little bit. We won't belabor it, but just to kind of remind everybody, the Gen X thing is Americans born kind of between mid 60s to late 70s, early 80s. It's between the baby boomers and the millennials. And it's sometimes referred to as like latchkey generation, which I really relate to, and I'll explain why, or like new lost generation, because like there was a lot of shifting with like society and kind of family values and that kind of thing. Back in those days, there was a high divorce rate. There were supposedly lonelier children kind of on their own. Because their parents were working, and so there was like a lot of this like rebellious youth, which kind of led to probably like punk and grunge and metal music, and being the MTV kids that we are, because that's actually another way to describe Gen X is. And I know, Sarah, you and I talk about this all the time, and we're definitely, I'm a hardcore MTV kid. I sat and watched MTV day in and day out. I still to
All
this
day.
day.
All day.
Yeah. So I would
Yeah.
say that when you see, like, what made an impression on you? How were you shaped or defined? So to answer your question, really, one of the things for me is the MTV thing, because even today, when I hear a song come on the radio, or I hear like a word that triggers like a memory of a song, what I remember is that music video. Whether it was like a David Bowie thing,
Or like
or
Soundgarden,
Billy
or it's just
Idol,
like
or yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Nirvana. Really, like that's huge for me. Huge, huge, huge. And there's actually just a quick little sidebar. I've mentioned this movie before. It's from 1979. It's called Over the Edge, and it stars Matt Dillon like in a cropped t-shirt. It's a great movie, and it's very, I think, representative of at least a lot of my upbringing. Maybe not as hardcore, because the kids they go over the edge, so to speak. I wouldn't say that we were that like rebellious, but that movie's awesome because they're latchkey kids, and it kind of paints an interesting picture. But what's interesting too is that we're also kids that kind of grew up with like personal computers, and we were sort of the first generation to kind of become tech savvy. And so that's an interesting one. And so I would say that is also very defining, because I remember having one of those first cell phones that were like a brick, with like a rubbery kind of antenna. And and I remember like, yeah, it was just a bizarre experience. I remember, sending my first email, and just kind of really being interested in technology at an early age, being somewhat savvy. I played a lot of the early, television video games. I was pretty into those early consoles. And I would say also some of the typical Gen X characteristics that I relate to. I don't know about you, Sarah. I'd love to hear from you on this, but there's a resourcefulness. And I think it's because we were kind of this latchkey thing where it's like, I know a lot of my friends, we talk about this a lot. Like I was always locked out of my house. Like my mom was at work. I had to like walk home from school, which was pretty far. Like I look at it today, I know my hometown. I've been back there, and it's like looking at it from an adult perspective, I'm like, wow, we walked all that way, and like alone, we didn't have a key to the house. Like I can't tell you how many times I have had to find a ladder, climb through the window, get my sister and I inside. And I learned early on to like be independent and problem solve and be street smart. And I'm still to this day proud of that. Like I really do feel like I'm a pretty street smart person. I don't think I'm like the most street smart, but I've had a lot of situations in other countries where I've had to really turn that on.
I would say, yeah, I would call like, if someone was like, what's Heather like? I'd be like, problem solver. For sure.
Yeah, totally.
True. And in the best way possible. Like
Yeah.
I really,
Yeah.
like you're not going to like lose your mind. You're going to like figure it out.
No, and it can be anything. It can be anything. I mean, like, I'm not talking about like math equations here. I'm talking about life issues.
Yeah.
Like problems with business and whatnot. I mean, it could be anything. What are we gonna have for dinner? I don't know. Yeah. So like, I definitely was a kid where we didn't have a lot of adult supervision, or we had some weird babysitter scene, which I'll get into some other time because that's a very fascinating little sidebar. But we would, after school, I mean, God, my sister and I watched MTV. We played games. We had to make our own fun. I remember how much we had to really lean into like our imaginations. Like we created these worlds of like these like other lives because we were bored, And so I think I think there's a creativity and an independence that came out of that era. And I think finally, work ethic, I think, is a big one. I think, people are always talking about how lazy the millennials are or whatever. I mean, I don't really know. I can't speak to that, but I do know for me, I started working at 14. I had a work permit. I had odd jobs through college. It was hard. I never didn't have a job. Like I was spoiled in a lot of ways. I've had a charmed life in a lot of ways, but I worked hard. I never didn't have a job. And I did some crazy stuff. I was a bike courier. I had a beeper. I had some really interesting experiences, but I think some of us also, maybe you could say, we don't give an F, give a fuck. I think that's maybe a bit of a quality. And this sort of ethnically diverse thing, I think, is an interesting one. Like I had a very ethnically diverse upbringing. My parents both had these roots in Japan. My best friend was Chinese, and we was very, very much this like interesting upbringing. But I'd be curious to hear from you guys if you're a Gen Xer. Did we miss anything, Sarah? Did I miss anything? What about you? What was it like for you?
Well, so while you were talking, Heather, I just looked up like what is Generation X, and according to Britannica.com, it's anyone born between 1965 and 1980. Yeah. So we're kind of right in the middle of that, I was born in 1976. I think you're 74. Mm-hmm. And so we're squarely Gen X.
We are.
And I know a lot of folks who are a little before that or a little after that, and I mean it's not like something we talk about all the time. But what I've always thought about and was always fascinating to me, and this was even when I was a kid, was so both of my parents are, they're from your hometown. They're the same age, and they were born in 1945. And so, until they were, I don't know, 10 years old, there was no television. Television did not exist. Like my parents spent, some, childhood years where it's like you listen to the radio or I don't know, look out the window or whatever. No TV. And then there was TV. And I always remember being like so fascinated, like I cannot believe that you were alive for like a while before there was television. That's crazy.
It's so crazy.
And it's so crazy, just like what? But when the internet rolled around, which was, I mean, I was on it earlier than most people because I was like on BBS's and I was just like a nerd kid.
Yeah.
And I have my mom to thank for that too, because she was kind of in that world as well. But, let's call it about 1994. That's pretty much when, AOL online, came into the mix and people started getting online and being like, oh, we're talking to each other and like looking things up. And I was like, oh my God, like we're the people who spent 18 years not having internet. And now we have internet.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the TV thing. It's like, oh, because so many people will just never know a life without that. I'm like, oh yeah, we didn't have internet. Like internet, that did not exist until I was like kind of almost an adult. I mean, I was still like a little younger than that, but like not much. I was sort of going into college. Like my life in college was like, we had like college email addresses, but like it wasn't like, like none of it was
pop
like
something like, it had an interesting sort of
.edu, like whatever.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. And like weird games that I could like download off the internet and like impress people. But it was weird. Like, I feel like that's like, I'm going to be like a dinosaur, in another 20 years, God willing, everybody, knock on wood that I'll last that long, to be like, oh yeah. No, I mean, I spent my entire childhood, no internet, didn't have internet.
I have to say,
and that is so weird.
It is super weird. Like something like when I do my escapism, I go into these movies or shows. I've talked a lot about liking watching stuff from the 70s and 80s because it pulls me back into this like analog, my childhood, where there were analog phones. There were no cell phones. That like I wasn't really spending a lot of time playing video games until I was like more in my late teens. But we were being creative, and Stranger Things is a great example because it takes place in the 80s, and it is really interesting to put yourself back in that decade where, pre-internet and pre all these technological things, and life was just simpler. And sometimes I crave that, and that's why I think I lean into watching things from those eras, because I kind of miss the simplicity of life back then.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about this for days. I love talking about this stuff. So
me too.
Yeah.
Because it's weird.
It's
weird
and cool and yeah.
And there's context, and nobody's right or wrong. The whole sort of like, oh, millennials. Well, I mean, I guess the whole thing now is like Gen Z's, like, they're lazy. A lot of my friends are, in the millennial category, but it's like, guys, come on, like context here.
It's such a generalization. I mean everything.
Yeah, like what do you have at your disposal? What do you care about? What have you learned? And I don't know. I don't feel like there's any generation that I'm like, well, they're the crappy one. No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's just different.
No, not at all.
It's different.
Context is key.
Indeed. Speaking of people who are key, or context, whatever, we do have new Discorders, folks who are patrons. Patreon.com/have such a good day is where to find out more about being a patron. If you're not already and you'd like to directly support the show, we would love to have you. But a couple folks slid into the Discord. Jake and Chase, we're so happy to have you.
So happy to have you. Awesome. They just really round out our little group in there.
Yeah. Yeah, the crew grows. The crew grows. We're surprised and delighted at all times. So if you are interested in joining our Discord, you have to be a patron. $5 or more. If you can part with it per month, is what we've got going on there. Please do if you can. And we love hanging out, IRL on the back channel, between shows, and Discord is the way that we do
all
that.
about the
So,
back
thank
channel.
you.
Seriously, it's so fun. I was actually
really is.
explaining to
It's all about the Benjamins and the back channel.
It was funny. A friend that was here this weekend, I was telling her about, because my phone was kind of blowing up and people were talking in Discord on my app, and she's like, well, what is that? I was like, yeah, it's my crew, from the show, and kind of explaining like everyone's from all around the world and it's fun, and we've never met each other IRL, but it's like we're buds, and we care about each other. And so it was neat to kind of, when I tell outsiders about it, they're like, oh wow, that's so cool. Like, wow, it's an interesting way to connect with people. Yeah.
All the time people are like, what, like, do you know them? And I'm like, well, yeah, I do. Kind of. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd like to, I would love to, host a brunch for all of us at some point.
Totally.
I don't know where we would go, Vegas or something.
Garden party.
But like, until then, yeah, we're just, we're internet friends. I have a lot of internet friends, and
you always have,
I
actually.
consider them friends as much as, anybody else.
Totally. Me too. And on that note, we got some Discording to do. So thank you for following us on this crazy show today, and we love you guys. I will remain Heather until next week, until we meet again.
Indeed. And until episode 157, which is our next episode, because this is 156, I will remain Sarah. And we hope you have such a good day.
Such a good day. Bye.